A standard thermometer has degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius in the United States. This is because degrees Fahrenheit is the common way of measuring temperature in the United States, but degrees Celsius is used by most other countries. So we get to learn about both the Fahrenheit scale and the Celsius scale. It turns out that the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit is a linear function of the temperature in degrees Celsius. So in this problem, we're going to see how we can get the slope of a linear function. And for this relationship between degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius, we will see how to find the formula relating the two and how to graph it, and then we will actually see the formula in action by verifying that a certain degree Celsius corresponds to a specific degrees Fahrenheit. So the first thing we want to do is find the slope of this linear function for Fahrenheit in terms of the temperature in degrees Celsius. So this phrase here, Fahrenheit in terms of temperature in degrees Celsius, tells us that Fahrenheit temperature depends on Celsius temperature. So Fahrenheit is our dependent variable or our output, and Celsius is our independent variable or input. So we can use this information and common corresponding temperatures to determine the slope of our linear relationship. So you should already know that 0 degrees Celsius corresponds to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and 100 degrees Celsius boiling point in Celsius scale corresponds to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the boiling point on the Fahrenheit scale. So to find the slope, we'll use our growth rate formula, which was the change in output over the change in input. So here the output or dependent variable is degrees Fahrenheit, and the independent variable was degrees Celsius. So our Fahrenheit temperatures were 212 and 32, and our Celsius temperatures are 100 and 0. So we find the change by finding the difference between the temperatures. We get the difference between these Fahrenheit temperatures is 180, and the difference between these Celsius temperatures is 100. So simplifying, that's 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1 degree Celsius. That's our slope. The second thing that we wanted to do was find a linear formula for converting degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius, then make a graph of the formula. So first we need to define our variables for our formula. Since Fahrenheit, this should be dependent, is the dependent variable, we'll call it F, and Celsius will be our independent variable, we'll call it C. We also know that the slope M is going to be 1.8, and the initial value for our formula will be 32 because this is when Celsius is 0 degrees. Fahrenheit's 32 and Celsius is 0. So that's our initial value. So we'll use the slope or the linear formula. Slope times the independent variable plus the initial value. So it's Fahrenheit equals slope times Celsius plus the initial value. So we have degrees Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times degrees Celsius plus 32. That's our formula here. Now we want to graph this formula. We'll have to start by making a vertical axis for our Fahrenheit temperature, our dependent variable, and a horizontal axis for our independent variable, Celsius. We'll add some temperatures to each axis, and we will start by placing points for the known values that we already know. So it was 0 degrees Celsius correspond to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll place a point at where Celsius would be 0 and Fahrenheit would be 32. So then it's right about here, somewhere between 0 and 50. And then we'll use the relationship 100 degrees Celsius and 212 degrees Fahrenheit to plot a second point where Celsius is 100 degrees and Fahrenheit would be just over 200 degrees. So that would be here. So this is just above 200, so that's about 212, and this is 100 for Celsius. And then we just connect those points, you can use a ruler, to draw our line of our formula, our straight line. So here's the straight line that connects those points. And then this represents our linear function, and every point on this line are corresponding Celsius and Fahrenheit temperatures. The thing we wanted to do was verify with our formula that 2.2 degrees Celsius corresponds to 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Use our formula from the previous question, Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. Replace the C, Celsius, with 2.2, and then simplify to see if we get 36. So 1.8 times 2.2 is 3.96. You can verify this with a calculator. Add that to 32, you should get 35.96. Rounding, this rounds approximately to 36 degrees Fahrenheit. So indeed, 2.2 degrees Celsius does correspond to 36 degrees Fahrenheit according to our formula.